Hey everybody, Backpack Hack here, coming at you with another trail tip for everybody out there. Here's something that you probably haven't thought of in terms of your preps, and that is buttons, ordinary buttons. It's amazing how people don't consider a button or a pile of buttons as part of their preps. But think about this. Think about your gear, and more importantly, your clothing. How important is a button to the function of your clothing? Now, yes, if I lost this button here, it would be an inconvenience, maybe an embarrassment. But a specific button on a specific piece of clothing or gear, if it's missing, in the right conditions, can be downright deadly. So I think it's important for everybody to have a variety of buttons. If nothing else, at least this many buttons, just a variety of sizes and colors. You don't have to match a button exactly to restore a piece of gear or clothing to functionality. It just has to work. We're not talking about fashion here. So everybody should have at least a handful of buttons, as well as a needle and thread and a pair of scissors, because sewing on a button is just sewing 101. I can remember when I was 10 years old, I was sewing buttons on my clothing. Even though Mom could do it, she taught us kids how to do it. And in fact, by the time I was 14, she gave all of us kids a little baby food jar full of buttons, and that was the seed for this. So I've been collecting buttons ever since. Now, you can buy these little kits that have the cheesy pair of scissors, a teeny little pair of scissors, and some needle and thread, and maybe buttons like that. And that may, get your shirt back together, but suppose you have a coat button that you need to put on. Something like these. These aren't going to do it. So having a kit, having some buttons at home and a needle and thread and a pair of scissors to at least sew on a button. When the grid goes down, when the trucks stop running and you can't go to the store and buy buttons, having a variety of buttons like this is going to be very, very important, because we're not trying to just get through the day with a piece of clothing that is missing a button. We're trying to make that piece of clothing last as long as possible. And we hate to just not use it because it's not functional, because it's simply missing one button. Now, where do I get my buttons? Well, like I said, my mom gave me, when I was a kid, a baby food jar full of buttons. Where did I get the rest of them? They were from clothing that I used to wear. During the course of a year, I may destroy 2 or 3 work shirts. And I mean destroy them. They can't be fixed. So I will cut all the buttons off and put them in a little container. And then in the wintertime, I'll sit down with a seam ripper and my needle nose and a pair of scissors, and I will take the material and the thread off of them before they even go in here. I will also take anything oddball, like a rusty metal one, if it's malformed or cracked or broken, or such a fancy one that it belongs on a luxury piece of clothing. Those things get tossed. I don't need those in this kit. I need utilitarian. That's what this is for, is to make my clothing last as long as possible. Another place you can get buttons is like yard sales and garage sales. Somebody may have a jar like this for sale for a minimum price. You can go to the store and buy a variety of buttons, but when I've seen those, they're usually the extravagant, the big fancy buttons that you really don't need, and they're an exorbitant price. Just a handful of them is like $10, $20. Thrift stores is another place. But when I have an article of clothing that I'm going to toss out simply because it's useless anymore, I will mine it for the buttons. And if it's cloth, I'll cut it up and I'll make char cloth. Watch this video up here if you want to know more about that. Otherwise, I cut it into rags. So all my shirts get recycled into some form or another. If it's a shirt that I don't wear anymore, it's still serviceable, it's perfectly good, but I don't wear it anymore, I give it to charity. But otherwise, I cut it up, I take the buttons off, clean them up, put them in the jar, make char cloth or rags out of it, and that's how you can start getting a button collection up like this. So this is Backpack Hack coming at you with this trail tip. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment on my videos. Be safe out there, and I'll see you out on the trail.